Hey everybody, it's Joe Trippi and welcome back to That Trippi Show with my co-host Alex Sashlow. This week, we've been on talking about this for a while now, actually since last November, telling anyone who would listen about double haters, and a new CNN poll has actually discovered it. We'll explain. Plus, Trump world is making a killing on Iran. Wonder where all that money you're paying at the pump or losing in market value is going.
I think I know.
No further. How do we make the case to voters who historically have given Trump a pass on corruption? I don't think. I think they're going to keep doing that, and it's a waste of time. Alex, where do you want to go today?
Well, let's start with the double haters. There's a pretty good clip on this from CNN. It was earlier this week. Like you said, we've been talking about it forever, but let's roll the clip, and then I want you to react to it.
How can they be up by 6 but have such a lousy favorability rating?
Yeah, you see Democrats up by 6 and only 28% favorable rating. How is that possible? It is because of the double haters. The most important 1/4 of the electorate you have ever seen. Take a look here. Who double haters prefer among the 26% who dislike not just the Democrats, but the Republicans as well? Look at this. Democrats up by a 55% to 24% margin. That's a 31-point lead among that key quarter of the electorate who can't stand either party. They are, in fact, the Democrats, the lesser of two evils.
This is the, pox on both their houses caucus,
Yes.
basically.
I will say, Joe, I know where you're about to go, but Harry is Harry had his coffee at 6:30
Well, he always
in the
has
morning
his
on
coffee,
CNN.
and usually too much of it. But that's beside the point. He gets a lot of stuff wrong. Let me just say this: we spotted this in November in the exit polls. By the way, the same CNN SRRI exits that he's quoting in today's CNN SRRI poll. It was clear when you looked at those exit polls, the double haters. This is the difference, though. He's talking about polling. We're talking about actual votes.
Right.
So what happened is,
explain for our listeners the difference between that exit polling methodology and how a poll works.
well, the exit poll is people who are coming out of the polling place. There's somebody there, gives them a questionnaire, asks them to fill it out confidentially. They do on how they voted and why. And what was interesting in November, and you kind of had to be, you could be a blind squirrel and still see it if somebody would, walk you through the numbers, and we did. Double haters, I think, were about 12% of the electorate in those in both New Jersey and Virginia. The critical thing here is double haters don't vote. They tend not to. If you can't stand Trump or Harris and you can't stand either party, why would you do it?
Right.
Makes sense. You don't need me to walk you through that. What was fascinating, though, was that the double haters did indeed vote. And they voted 8-2, 80% for the Democrat, both in Virginia and in New Jersey. And that trend has continued wherever you could find it, and in other states, when a pollster asked it. But what Harry Enton was talking about is now a current poll that shows the same exact thing. 55% of double haters say they're voting for the Democrats. 22%, so better than 2-1, are saying right now they're voting for the Republicans, and 17% say they haven't made up their minds, they're undecided. So the way this usually works, the undecided cohort of any, undecideds among Democrats, undecided among Republicans, independents, double haters, tend to break the way the other deciders have already decided. So when you have 55-22, that 17% is likely. This is how you get to that 80-20 or 70-30 break that double haters have shown actually at the polls, not in a in a questionnaire, in a poll. So what I'm saying here is something that you and I talked about back in November. Actually, I think we've talked about it on most of our shows, just to continue that the double haters are still there, that the two things that are making this a wipeout, not a blue wave, but a change wave, a wave of change, is that independents have gone completely just rebelled and pushed away from MAGA and Trump. 22, 23, 24, somewhere in the 20s approval rating, and disapproving on the war, on inflation, tariffs, all of it, by similar numbers. And then at the same time, the other thing, this is how you get to that 25% overperformance in Georgia with Sean Harris. Even he lost, but he performed 25% better or something like that. The reason is independents are done, and double haters are voting overwhelmingly for Democrats. That is a real problem, and it was a real problem before the war. It's a bigger problem today.
So we cut the video because it kept going for a while, but I went and pulled a couple of numbers, and there's two sets of numbers I think that are important here for historical context. I know you mentioned Virginia last year. In 2024, Trump won the double haters by 20. In 2016, Trump won the double haters by 16. And in the 2022 midterms, where Republicans made a pretty big dent, they went, I think, for the generic, or this was exit, so this was for the Republican candidate, plus 17. You add those up, the other thing in those elections, somewhere around, I think at a low point, it was 11% of the electorate, and I think that was probably the midterms. But if you look at in the two presidentials, the double haters were around like 15 to 18 to 19% of the electorate. That number is going up. And so what that means, not only are they more critical, so it's one thing if you're winning a cohort of the electorate that's like 2 or 3% by 31 points, but this is 25%, man. I mean, this is a big chunk.
Yeah, it's not just that, it's also the fact that how do you put this? The double haters have completely turned, right? If you look at that 20, the 16 points that Trump won them by, the 24 points, the 22, in the 17 points in 2022, you're looking at, I think, the period where the world, evidently the talking heads are still they're still in that world, right? Where you see them talking on MSNBC, CBS, whatever, CNN, all of them, for the most part, maybe MSNBC not so much, but essentially, what are Democrats going to do about their toxic brand? They all talk about our toxic brand. Well, I think what is going on, the reason you're seeing this huge shift in double haters and independents who marginally went with Trump the independents did in 2024, like they marginally went with Biden in 2020, and went with Trump in 2016 against Hillary. No, those two groups have completely gone the other way. And what that means is, it would be interesting to see somebody on these shows after Harry did his thing, talking about something that's become more toxic than however toxic you think the Democratic brand is. And I'm not saying it doesn't have its problems, we do, but the something has happened between 2024 and today that has made another brand even more toxic, at least to the double haters and the independents. And that's Trump and MAGA, my friends. And that's why this isn't a blue wave. It is independents, it's double haters, it's Democrats, it's soft Republicans, and it's going to be enormous. There's nothing, this complete failure at the war. I mean, complete. There's no way to, Iran still has its nuclear, it's uranium, it's enriched uranium. It still has The regime is still there. Yeah, they killed a lot of members of the regime, but it still repopulates every time. And there's something they didn't have before this was control of the Strait of Hormuz in a way where they could charge a toll that actually gives them even more money to build a nuclear weapon or buy one. So no, it's a complete failure, a complete, aid. You go to fill your tank today, and the new analysis shows that we are paying out of our pockets 850 million additional dollars a day as a war tax at the gas pump. So, you keep hearing about the $1 billion a day we're spending on missiles and, and personnel, which it's gone higher than that during the war. But no, we're spending about that much each of us. First of all, we paid our taxes for that. I mean, to fund all that. That's where, legitimately they were collected, and that's how they were allocated in the budget. This is off budget. How do you charge the American people $850 million a day for your big mistake, which I think hopefully is going to get to another one of the things you want to talk about at some point.
Yeah, I mean, the other, by the way, since we tried to record this, and this is take two for just to really peel back the curtain, Melania Trump did a press conference about Epstein. She never does press conferences, and she was basically like, I was never on his plane. I don't know who he was. I emailed Ghislaine once, but that was just a random thing. Like, everyone now is like, what else are they trying to get in front of? My initial take is just that the war is going so badly that they decided to have Melania give a press conference. But about Epstein, which kind of tells you, if that is indeed the case, how badly this is being perceived. I don't know, man. Any thoughts on what that was, or is there another Epstein shoe dropping? And then I'll get back to some numbers.
I don't know. Maybe it's Melania trying to distance herself from Trump. I mean, it's without having to pay the penalty price for whatever arrangement they have. I don't know. It makes no sense. Like everything else about this White House, it makes no sense at all. They had effectively, with Iran, pushed Epstein off of the scope, and Melania, for unexplained reasons,
just got up at the White House and started talking about Epstein. Yeah. There was, very rarely, I mean, in this administration too, very rarely do you see like members of the media audibly shocked when someone opens their mouth. Today was one of those days. It was kind of great. I have a pile of numbers for you, and just stop me when you want to talk about one. In that CNN SSRI poll that showed that the double haters really, really don't like Trump. Yeah. The thing, it was like the last sentence in the write-up, which I think was kind of buried, but everyone kept making a huge deal about young people going to Trump in 2024 and how it was a new part of their coalition. No one wants to vote now. Like a massive motivation decline. I think less than a third of Republicans under 45 say they're motivated extremely, or like more than an 8 out of 10 motivated to vote, which is a huge red flag, especially because Democrats are basically the complete opposite and do not have this problem. Yeah. I mean, from motivation, and then I have a ton on blaming costs, but I mean, it's very clear to your point about how it being a wipeout. Every number is pointing to that, and they are not coming around to save him.
It's the trifecta, right? Independents, gone. Double haters, gone. Republicans under 45, not really interested in voting, while everybody else under 45 and otherwise, I mean, if you're any of those independents, Democrats, double haters, they're voting, and they're voting more, not just more for Democrats, but with more intensity. And that's how you get these massive 25 point, 20 point, 18 point or the Wisconsin Supreme Court race where there's no race. I mean, this is a place where everything's been decided statewide by a point to 3 points, or even a half a point, and suddenly there isn't one.
12,
there's not a race, so. Yeah. We've seen it.
a bunch of other stuff came out. There's some focus groups with women I really want to get to, but I love this question, especially when you're running against an incumbent. One of my favorite questions is essentially when you ask voters something, of course, people will say things like, yeah, my biggest concern is gas prices or affordability. But you get into like who they blame and you get into like the partisan splits on that. You start looking, Americans disapprove of Trump's handling of gas prices by 37 points. Independents, he's under 20. He's at 15% approved, 72 on gas with independents. Republicans a little bit more positive, but for the most part, we're talking net numbers with independents on individual issues that I think you and I talked about this like 2 weeks ago. He's fallen below 20 on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
So
they're done. I'm telling you, I keep saying this. I think we actually titled the show, I've never seen these kind of numbers, but it's the truth. I have never seen independents as a block, literally voting as a partisan block or an anti-partisan block, however you want to say it. I'm not sitting here telling you, boy, they love Democrats. But one thing's for sure, they're voting for Democrats over MAGA and Trump and the Republicans.
You know, an old friend used to say, "Let the haters hate." In this case, it's definitely let the double haters hate.
Yeah.
So my thing. Sometimes you find a number, and by the way, one thing on exit polls before I forget. Every year since we've been working together, at around 2 or 3 o'clock on election day, my time on election day, when you get the first round of exits, you usually call me and you tell me what's going to happen. You told me this in 20. You told me this in 24. We saw this with Doug Jones. Every single time. It's like these exits are like either bad news for somebody or this thing is going to go long. These exits are telling a story now. The actual polls are telling us, the actual votes are telling a story and the polls are telling a story. My thing though, and this is where I'm curious to your take, if you can think of a better one, I'm curious. I think the whole who do you trust on gas or who do you blame on gas might be like, if you want to know how this election is going to go, just watch that number. It's like the proxy. If he's at 17% with independents on how to handle gas prices or who they trust, if overall Americans trust the Democratic Party more to handle gas prices than Trump, which they do right now, it's like a +4. That's all you need to know. I don't need to see any other numbers. Is there any other number you think that is more relevant than that?
Well, we're still a long way off, and that number can change. The one thing I don't think is going to change is gas prices. I mean, they're no matter what, if you snapped your fingers and the Strait of Hormuz was open tomorrow and Iran was letting everybody through, including fertilizer and aluminum and everything else that's been held up, the backlog of ships will take weeks, clearing the mines, all of it. This isn't going to be, and by the way, even if you snapped your fingers and it never happened, and we just started free today, it would still take months for the price of gasoline to go down. We might be talking July, August, but that's if everything was cleared up, ASAP, which does not look like that's going to happen. And so, no, I think you're right. I'm more looking at, like you and I've always talked about, it's not any one of those 15s. It's when you start seeing that number over and over and over again. In other words, when you start to see independents say, no, I don't like the way he's handling this by 20. No, I don't like the way he's handling gas prices by, only 15% approved. When you start seeing numbers just start chiming in and rhyming really close to each other with a specific group, in this case, we'll look at independents, that's not a changeable thing. That usually tells you there's not a lot of room there. They've made up their minds. They're done with you. And the same thing, by the way, Alex, and you brought it up, if you're really looking at these kind of numbers and you keep seeing 53-47, 53-47, what do you think of this? Oh, he's handling that 53-47. Yeah, it means it's going to be close. It means that there's not a lot of room in a totally different way. But the problem here is when you start getting 80, when you get 80% in real votes, 80% of double haters voting for Democrats, They can't stand the party. They don't like, they're voting for Democrats. That combine it with independents approving of his handling on gas prices with 15%, which means that other number, guess what, has to be pretty close to 80. I don't know if you have it handy, but it's got to be in the 70s or 80s. I think it's 73
I think it was like
approved.
73, 74.
Yeah, something like that. So yeah, guess what? It's all, you can't, a poll doesn't get that number. There, the margin of error matters when you've got a 53-47 number. 3-point margin error, 4-point margin error on an issue or a problem, or even the head-to-head. It's a different issue than 80-20. And when it's confirmed with actual votes, I mean, geez, I wonder what's causing all these overperformance numbers of Democrats. How does Sean Harris get overperformed by 25 points in Marjorie Taylor Greene's district? How does that happen?
Right.
It's the trifecta. Independents moving, basically voting as partisans with Democrats for the most part. Double haters voting with Democrats, 80-20, and this problem that you're starting to see with energy dropping on the Republican side, and even when you look at, I think it was even MAGA, I think some big percent of them think that he handled Iran just right, and a third of them said that he hadn't hit Iran hard enough. This goes back to the alligator Alcatraz, and 31% saying that ICE wasn't being brutal enough. There's a split, definitely. I know we see arguments with Megyn Kelly and Tucker Carlson, but when you look at the result, how MAGA voters are starting to splinter over, yeah, Iran's just fine. Damn, I wish he had hit him harder. Those two, how does he solve that? He's basically, withdrawn from the battlefield. Iran has still got its enriched uranium, still has control of the Strait of Hormuz, which wasn't even an issue before any of this. Gas prices are up. I just think that you're starting to see real divide. Now, I will caution, because you asked that in one of the questions at the top of the show was, how do we talk to these people about, who've looked the other way on corruption? I'm still a big believer. Don't waste your time. Talk to the independent. Basically,
well, yeah, I mean,
what I'm saying is, and fundamentally, this all points to the bigger issue of how do we protect the election? How do you volunteer to work at a polling place, to be a monitor outside the polling place, to stand literally to think about standing between yourself and ICE if it shows up at your polling place to make sure people can vote, or whatever other garbage Trump and the Justice Department and some of these governors and legislators are going to do in some of these states to try to do the only thing they can do to stop this wave of change that's going to throw them all out. It is to throw hurdles up to make sure that early voting doesn't have, that there aren't drop boxes, that there's intimidation at the polling places. All that is where I think this is all going now.
I mean, this was Sherry's question in California, by the way. I saw Gavin Newsom's post about this, but is corruption something we can really win on? And I think he posted, while you're paying billions more at the gas pump, Trump's allies are cashing in. And I think he quote tweeted James Tate, who basically pointed out all the poly market call sheet, all the manipulation, crazy numbers.
Yeah, a Trump insider opened up a $51 million oil short position, shorted oil, hours before Trump announced a ceasefire with Iran. And this guy is now 16 for 16. He's never lost on one of these bets. He made $170 million in profit. perfect
Right.
streak. This is not a talented trader. This quoting James Tate. We placed the bet. The ceasefire dropped. We cashed out 16 times in a row. That's
Right.
not skill. It's not skill. That's not instinct. That's not research. That is someone who knows what is coming before it comes. And that's
Right.
now I understand we can say that. You can say that to the MAGA folks who believe he can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue and must have a good reason. But the bigger threat here to us, to democracy, to how it's working, are the CNBC, I think, had a report yesterday that they're seeing retail investors come pouring in and suddenly buying for the first time. They've never seen retail investors rolling in to buy oil futures, but retail investors are so what you got to worry about is people out there learning you could make a lot of money, but just by betting on what on Trump, on the taco trade, whatever, which is, in other words, I made $100,000 on that bet, so yeah, I'm going to keep voting for Trump. I don't know, but they may. I mean, I think it's like grooming a lot of their supporters to get in on the grift is part of what's going on.
Well, and historically, retail, and this is, we should probably ask our colleague Kobe about this in terms of the trends over time, but it was always institutions, it was always hedge funds. And now you're seeing, by the way, and there's a whole other show to do about the total deregulation of any of these betting markets. And by the way, I will say, for those of you who watched on video, the Harry Enton clip, at the bottom of the CNN ticker was a little blurb saying it was powered by Kalshi. Who is now the official prediction market provider. CNN isn't, other than quoting like exit polls, CNN isn't really using polling anymore. They're using odds from, so when you see something on CNN saying Democrats are favored to take back on the House, they're showing you Kalshi's odds. They're not showing you a poll that shows that. They're showing you that the market is showing, that the prediction market is showing that 73% of people think or have money on the fact that. So again, those are multiple other shows. Joe, we actually kind of blew through our topics and are just about out of time. There's a bunch we still got to get to on AI. Again, that's going to be another show. Anything else you want to hit today? I know we covered a lot.
No, I think we hit all the important stuff. Thanks everyone for listening. Thanks, Alex. And thanks to everybody for listening or watching that Trippi Show. Make sure to join us at sez.us, a civil social network for real people, not bots or algorithms. And I think there's going to be some news coming out about where that's all going. Very excited about some potential real boost to the effort. This podcast will always be free and is part of Lincoln Square, so check out the latest at lincolnsquare.media. Also, if you're listening to this episode on YouTube, please like and subscribe to get alerts when we post the next episode. And you can always send us a question to thattrippishow@gmail.com or leave us a question in the review on iTunes. Thanks, Alex. We'll see you all next week.